The silence in our house had a weight to it, a physical presence that settled over the furniture and seeped into the walls. It was the quiet of a life perfectly arranged, meticulously planned, and suffocatingly predictable. My name is Sabrina, and I was 32 years old, living a life that any outside observer would have labeled a success. I had a husband, Nolan, a man built of logic and stability. I had two beautiful children, a boy and a girl, whose laughter should have been the only soundtrack I ever needed. I had a home in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac, with a manicured lawn Nolan tended to every Saturday morning. From the outside, it was a portrait of the American dream. From the inside, it felt like a gilded cage. Nolan was a good man. I have to start there, because the narrative I spun for myself later required him to be a villain, and that was never the truth. He wasn't cruel or neglectful. He was just constant, predictable. His love was like a well-engineered bridge, strong, reliable, and utterly devoid of poetry. He never gave me a reason to doubt him, but he also never gave me a reason to feel that dizzying, heart-thumping thrill I read about in books and saw in movies. I just felt bored. Boredom feels like a shallow word for such a deep-seated ache, but it's the only one that fits. I was bored with being a wife, bored with being a mom, bored with the rhythmic, unchanging beat of our life. I'd catch myself scrolling through social media, a voyeur into other people's vibrant lives. Women my age, unburdened, clinking glasses at rooftop bars, dancing in strobe lights, posting blurry, joyful selfies with captions like, "Living my best life." I was jealous. A venomous, ugly jealousy that I would never admit aloud. Then there was Blair, my best friend since high school, who had shed her own marriage a year ago and emerged like a phoenix, albeit one that smelled faintly of tequila and questionable decisions. Her phone calls were like dispatches from another universe. "You will not believe the guy I met last night," she'd slur, the sound of a distant bass line thumping through the receiver. God, Sabrina, I forgot what it was like to just be free. No one to answer to, no kids waking you up at dawn. She'd send me pictures, her arm draped around a handsome stranger, a tray of colorful shots, a sunrise from a balcony that wasn't hers. I'd sit there on my beige sofa, the scent of chicken nuggets still lingering in the air, and feel like I was missing something fundamental about being alive. Nolan never forbade me from seeing my friends, but he set boundaries. He was a man of boundaries. "I just don't like the way Blair and her crowd live, Sabrina," he'd said once, his tone calm and measured, which was somehow more infuriating than if he had yelled. "They're reckless, irresponsible." He was right, of course. I'd been a part of that life before Nolan, before the mortgage and the minivan. It was fun then, a distant, hazy memory. But now, it wasn't just about fun anymore. It was about freedom. I didn't want to be the mom figure, the wife who always had to stay home and orchestrate the domestic ballet of dinner, bath, and bedtime. I wanted to feel a spark again. I wanted to feel free. My single friends became a Greek chorus of temptation. "You deserve to have fun," they'd say. "Nolan's not going to change, he's too stuck in his ways." They were right about one thing. He had his ways, his logic, his boundaries, and I hated them. I hated that he wouldn't just let me be spontaneous, that he'd raise an eyebrow if I wanted to go out on a Tuesday. It wasn't controlling, not really. It was just Nolan. He didn't want his wife, the mother of his children, getting drunk and running around with people who didn't care about consequences. But I didn't care about consequences anymore. I only cared about the cage. So one Friday, I made a decision. I put the kids to bed, showered, and slipped into a dress I hadn't worn in years. It was a little tight, a whisper of the woman I used to be. "I'm going out with the girls," I announced, walking into the living room where Nolan was reading a book on investment strategies. He looked up, and his eyebrow did that little thing, the slight arch of disapproval. It should have been a red flag. At that moment, it felt like a green light. I was ready to live. He didn't argue. He just looked at me for a long moment, his gaze analytical, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. Then he sighed, a quiet puff of resignation. "Be safe," he said, and turned back to his book. That night, dancing under neon lights, a cocktail cold in my hand, I felt like I had regained control of my life. I wasn't Nolan's wife or a mother of two. I was just Sabrina. And it felt amazing. The more I did it, the more I wanted it. I wasn't thinking about Nolan or the kids. I wasn't thinking about anything but myself. And that, I would soon learn, was the entire problem. The first few weeks were a blur of manufactured bliss. Each Friday and Saturday night became an escape hatch. I would live a double life: competent, responsible mother and wife by day, uninhibited, free spirit by night. The transformation was intoxicating. I'd shed my mom jeans for tight dresses, swap the scent of baby wipes for expensive perfume, and trade the quiet hum of the suburbs for the deafening pulse of the city. The gap between Nolan and me widened with each late night I stumbled home. It wasn't a chasm that opened with a single dramatic earthquake, but a slow, creeping erosion. The long conversations we used to have after the kids were asleep dwindled into monosyllabic exchanges. "Have fun?" he'd ask from his side of the bed, not looking up from his laptop. "Yeah," I'd mumble, pulling off my heels. "It was fine. He stopped asking questions like, "Who's driving?" or "What time will you be back?" At first, I convinced myself it was a sign of trust that he was finally letting go. But it wasn't trust. It was detachment. He was observing me from a distance, like a scientist watching a specimen in a petri dish, waiting to see what it would do next. I remember one night he sat me down on the couch, the television muted, the only light coming from a single lamp that cast long shadows across the room. "Sabrina," he began, his voice devoid of anger, which made it all the more unsettling. "I get that you want to go out and have fun. But this isn't just about you anymore. You're a mother, a wife. We have responsibilities." I didn't want to hear it. His logic felt like an accusation. His responsibility felt like a chain. A switch flipped inside me, and years of unspoken resentment came pouring out. I didn't sign up to be a mom and a wife forever. I snapped, my voice sharp and ugly. "I'm still a person, Nolan. I want to feel like I'm not just stuck in this house cooking and cleaning every damn day." The hurt in his eyes was immediate and deep. It was a flicker of pain he couldn't hide behind his logical facade. But I didn't care. I was angry. Angry that he didn't understand. Angry that he wasn't the kind of man who would just let me do whatever I wanted. I wanted him to let me live. And the fact that he wasn't okay with my version of living infuriated me. Looking back, I know how selfish I was. But at the time, it felt like a righteous battle for my own soul. The more he tried to ground me in our reality, the more I rebelled. All the while, Blair was in my ear, a devil on my shoulder, dressed in designer clothes. "He's just too controlling," she'd say over brunch, sunglasses hiding her hangover. "You deserve to be happy, Sabrina. You're finally living." Finally living. That phrase hit me. As if the 10 years I had spent building a family, raising children, and sharing a life with Nolan hadn't been living at all. But I let her words sink in, let them justify my behavior. It wasn't just about fun anymore. It was about avoiding the quiet, steady responsibility of being in a committed relationship, of being a mother. I didn't see it yet. Not really. I just knew that the thrill of a Friday night was more appealing than the quiet peace of my home. The true shift happened one evening after a particularly tense dinner. I was getting ready to go out, applying makeup with a concentration I hadn't dedicated to anything in years. Nolan walked past the bathroom, paused, and leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed. He watched me in the mirror, his expression unreadable. "You're really doing this again," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was calm but sharp like a needle. "Doing what, Nolan?" I shot back, blending my foundation a little too aggressively. "Going out to have a little fun? God forbid." He shook his head slowly. "Go have your fun, Sabrina. I'm done talking about it." That should have been my cue to stop, to see the precipice I was standing on. Instead, I laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. "Yeah, well, maybe you should come with me one of these nights." "Oh wait, I forgot, you hate fun." His eyes narrowed. "No," he said, his voice flat. "I just know fun doesn't come with a hangover and bad decisions." He turned and walked away before I could respond. Bad decisions. The words stuck with me as I stared at my reflection, mascara wand poised in my hand. A part of me, a small, terrified voice in the back of my mind, knew he was right. But I silenced it. I grabbed my clutch, walked past him without another word, and stepped out into the night, chasing a feeling I couldn't name, running from a life I no longer appreciated. Nolan's words about bad decisions echoed in my head, but I drowned them out with loud music and overpriced gin. His quiet disapproval became fuel. I wasn't just going out for fun anymore, I was going out to prove a point. To prove that I was desirable, that I was exciting, that I was more than the woman he saw every day in sweatpants. Each night became a performance. I wore tighter dresses, higher heels, and a brighter, more brittle smile. That's how I met Julian. It was at a rooftop bar downtown, the kind of place where the city lights glittered below like a fallen constellation. The air was thick with energy and ambition. Blair was in her element, pulling me through the crowd, laughing like she owned the place. And then, there was the attention. The subtle glances, the accidental bumps, the offers to buy a drink. After years of feeling invisible, of being Mom or Nolan's wife, it was a potent drug. It made you feel like you were still that girl. Julian stood out from the rest. He wasn't flashy or loud. He was smooth, clean-cut, with a disarming smile and an easy confidence. He approached me not with a cheesy pickup line, but with a simple observation about the song playing. We talked for a while, small talk, nothing serious. He wasn't pushy, and I told myself I wasn't interested in anything more than a conversation. When Blair saw us, she gave me a mischievous grin. "Ooh, he's cute," she whispered, nudging me. "Nolan who?" She laughed. I rolled my eyes, but I didn't walk away. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a text message from an unknown number. "Julian, you make it home safe? Had fun talking to you. You're different from the girls I usually meet." I stared at the screen, a thrill running through me. I hadn't done anything wrong, I reasoned. I hadn't cheated. It was just talking. I could have deleted the message and moved on. Instead, I replied, "Me. Yeah, made it home. Last night was fun for sure." His reply was almost instant. "Good. I meant what I said. You're different." I smiled at that. I don't know why. For the next few days, it became our little habit. A secret world contained within the glowing screen of my phone. Julian would text, and I'd respond. The conversation was never explicit, never crossed a clear line, but it was charged with a simmering potential. It was exciting. It was something new, something that wasn't dishes, laundry, or grocery lists. I became an expert in subterfuge. I'd glance at my phone while Nolan was in the kitchen, typing quick replies when he wasn't looking. I'd smile to myself at one of his jokes, and if Nolan asked what was funny, I'd just say, "Oh, just a meme Blair sent." I told myself it was harmless. I told myself I would stop, but I didn't. The texts were an emotional affair, a betrayal of intimacy even if it wasn't physical. I was giving a part of myself, my humor, my attention, my validation to a stranger, a part that rightfully belonged to my husband. Julian was telling me I was different, exciting, and fun, all the things I felt Nolan no longer saw in me. It was a dangerous, addictive feedback loop. One text from him, I remember clearly. I had sent him a witty, self-deprecating comment about motherhood. He replied, "You're way too cool to be just a suburban mom." I read that line over and over. He saw me. He saw the person I wanted to be, not the person I was. Blair, of course, thought it was fantastic. "See? Other guys appreciate you," she said. "It's just a harmless flirtation. It's good for your ego." But it wasn't harmless. It was a flame I was nurturing in the dry, brittle structure of my marriage. And I was about to find out that even the smallest flame, left untended, can burn everything to the ground. The end came not with a bang, but with the soft tap of footsteps on the stairs. It was a Tuesday night. The kids were in bed, the house was quiet, and Nolan was upstairs, supposedly finishing a work project. I was on the couch, lost in the blue light of my phone, a stupid grin on my face as I texted with Julian. He had just sent a joke, and I was typing a laughing emoji in response when I heard it. Footsteps, deliberate, unhurried. I looked up just as Nolan appeared at the bottom of the staircase. He wasn't holding a laptop. He was holding the family iPad. His face wasn't angry. It was blank, utterly, terrifyingly calm. He stood there, the iPad held in his hand like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "You forgot to log out of your Messages app on the iPad," he said, his voice even. My heart did a painful lurch. a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I tried to feign nonchalance, to act normal, as if I hadn't just been caught red-handed. Oh, okay. And? I played it off, my voice a little too high. His jaw tightened, just a fraction. But his calm held. Julian, he said, tapping the screen. You know him, right? You two seem real friendly. My face flushed with heat. The classic deflection, the only weapon I had, was to turn the blame. Are you serious right now? You're snooping through my messages like a teenager? I barked, my voice dripping with manufactured outrage. I didn't have to snoop, Sabrina, he said, taking a slow step closer. The iPad screen glowed between us. You left it right there. Texts popping up, one after another. I didn't have to go looking. He tilted his head, his eyes locked on mine. But I did read them. All of them. My stomach plummeted. The air left my lungs. You're different from the girls I usually meet. Real poetic, he said, his voice laced with a sarcasm so cold it burned. So, what part of this is just fun again? Please, help me understand. I shot up from the couch, crossing my arms over my chest, a flimsy shield against his unwavering gaze. Nolan, it's not that serious. He's just some guy I met. We were talking. That's it. You're acting like I cheated or something. Talking. He repeated the word as if it were foreign, tasting it with disgust. He glanced down at the iPad, swiped, then read aloud. You're cute. Too bad I'm married. He read it slowly, his eyes lifting to meet mine, pinning me in place. That's just talking, huh? Now I was fully defensive, backed into a corner of my own making. Okay, so what? I didn't do anything, Nolan. I didn't touch him. I didn't kiss him. Nothing happened. Stop being so dramatic. Yeah, you just entertained it. He shot back, his eyes narrowing. The calm was finally starting to crack, revealing the cold fury beneath. You don't see the problem there, huh? No, I don't. I threw my hands up in exasperation. And then, I said it. The final, fatal blow. The words I could never take back. Maybe if you didn't act so boring all the time, I wouldn't have to go out just to feel alive. The words hung in the air between us. Toxic and radioactive. I saw it hit him. It wasn't a flinch. It was a shuddering. Something inside him closed, locked, and went dark. He nodded slowly, his lips pressed into a thin white line. He looked me up and down, but it was like he was seeing me for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw. All right, he said. The two words were so quiet, so filled with a chilling finality, they made my blood run cold. All right, Sabrina. He turned and walked toward the hall closet. Where are you going? I asked, my voice suddenly small, following him as if I suddenly cared. He didn't turn around. He pulled his jacket from the closet. To be boring somewhere else. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, his phone from the charger. There was no shouting, no threats, just quiet, controlled movements that felt heavier than any fight we'd ever had. Really? This is what you're doing now? I said, my arms still crossed, trying desperately to reclaim the role of the victim. You're just going to walk out? He stopped at the door and finally looked back at me, his face a mask of disappointment. Nah, he said softly, I'm not walking out. He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle. I'm just letting you be free, like you wanted. And then he was gone. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut, a soft final sound that echoed the closing of a chapter, the end of a life. I stood there, staring at the solid wood, telling myself he'd be back. He always came back. But this time, I wasn't so sure. Days bled into one another in a haze of suffocating silence. At first, I was defiant. I told myself Nolan was being dramatic, that this was a cool-off phase, a tactic to make me feel guilty. He'll come back, I thought, scrolling through my phone, trying to project an aura of indifference to an empty house. But he didn't. There were no texts, no calls, no missed calls from him when I was out. It was a complete and total void. It was like I had ceased to exist for him. The quiet I had once craved now felt menacing, the silence heavier than all our arguments combined. Then, on Friday, exactly 1 week after he left, I heard the key in the front door. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. Finally, I played it cool, staying on the couch, pretending to be engrossed in my phone. When I glanced up, I saw him. And he wasn't alone. He walked in, his expression impassive, followed by a man in a crisp navy blue suit carrying a leather briefcase. Not a friend, not family, a lawyer. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. "Nolan, what is this?" I asked, my voice straining to sound calm. "Just here to grab some things," he said simply, his voice cold and distant. He didn't even look at me. He was speaking to me like a stranger, an inconvenient obstacle in his path. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What do you mean, grab some things? You're being dramatic, Nolan." He didn't answer. He walked straight to the hall closet, pulled out a duffel bag, and began methodically filling it with his clothes, his charger, his toiletries. He moved with a calm precision that spoke of a decision made long ago. "Nolan, come on," I scoffed, getting to my feet. My bravado was a flimsy shield. "You're really packing a bag? Seriously? After one argument?" He zipped the bag slowly, slung it over his shoulder, and finally turned to face me. He really looked at me then, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger or sadness. It was peace. A terrifying, unshakable peace. "I'm done, Sabrina," he said calmly, his voice steady. "No more arguments, no more cooling off. I'm done." I blinked, processing the finality in his tone. "You're done." I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead, run away like a coward. You'll be back. You always come back." He didn't flinch. Then the lawyer spoke, his voice polite but firm. "Mrs. Callahan, you'll be served with the formal divorce papers on Monday. This is just a courtesy notice." My heart stopped. The world tilted on its axis. "Divorce?" I repeated the word, the laugh dying in my throat. I stared at Nolan, searching his face for any sign that this was a bluff. There was none. "Oh, so that's it? You're just going to file for divorce and walk away like it's that simple?" Nolan tilted his head. "Yeah, Sabrina," he said. "That's exactly what I'm going to do." My fear was quickly being replaced by a hot, panicked anger. "Please," I rolled my eyes, falling back on my last line of defense. "Money. You think you're slick, but I know how this works. We've been married for 10 years, Nolan. I'm getting half. You think you're walking out of here with your big paycheck and I'm getting nothing?" I laughed in his face, shaking my head. "Nah, it doesn't work like that, baby." He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just walked to the kitchen, grabbed his wallet from the counter, and turned back to face me one last time. "You really think I didn't plan for this?" he asked, one eyebrow raised. "You think I didn't see this coming?" "What are you talking about?" I shot back, squinting at him. "I knew you'd slip up," he said, shaking his head like I was a child who didn't understand simple math. "You think I didn't notice you changing, Sabrina? The nights out, the new clothes, the random texts that made you smile? Come on, I've been watching you for months." He stepped closer, his eyes boring into mine. "The texts, the friends from the club? I was just waiting for you to give me a reason. And you did." The blood drained from my face. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You played checkers," he said, pointing a finger at me. "But I played chess." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and tossed it onto the coffee table. It slid across the glossy surface, stopping right in front of me. I hesitated, then snatched it, my hands trembling as I flipped it open. My eyes scanned the dense legal text. "Postnuptial agreement." My heart stopped. "You signed it 4 years ago, remember?" Nolan's voice was cool, controlled, the voice of a man who had already won. "Back when I got that big promotion. We talked about protecting our assets in case one of us made a bad financial move." He shrugged. "You were so busy spending the extra money you didn't even read it. You just signed it." "No," I muttered, shaking my head. No, that's not what this is." I scanned the page frantically, searching for a loophole, for anything. And then I saw it. The clause was there in plain, brutal black and white. In the event of infidelity, the offending party forfeits any claim to spousal support, marital assets, or marital funds. "No," I whispered, blinking hard, as if I could unsee the words. "This isn't real." "It's very real, Sabrina," Nolan said, standing tall. "I had it notarized and filed. Everything in my name stays in my name. The house, the savings, my retirement, the stocks, all of it." "Nolan," I pleaded, my voice finally cracking, desperation seeping in. "We have kids. We've been together for 10 years. You can't just... You can't just do this to me. He tilted his head, his eyes as cold as stone. I'm not doing anything to you, Sabrina. You did this to yourself. I didn't cheat, I snapped, my voice rising. Texting someone isn't cheating. Oh, infidelity isn't just physical, Sabrina. His voice was sharp, each word a precise cut. You violated the emotional trust of our marriage. It's a breach of the agreement. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's in black and white. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. He was right, and I had signed it. Enjoy the freedom you wanted, he said, grabbing the handle of his duffel bag. You're free now. No boring husband, no rules. Just you and whatever random guy you can text at 2 in the morning. He walked to the door, his lawyer trailing behind him. He didn't look back. He just left. I stood there, holding that piece of paper, my world collapsing in on itself. I thought I was playing a game. I thought I was in control. But Nolan had been watching, waiting, and he hadn't just won. He had checkmated me. I stood in the silence, clutching the postnuptial agreement until my knuckles were white and the paper was creased with the imprint of my panic. My eyes stayed fixed on the words I had already memorized, the sentence that was now the epitaph of my life as I knew it. Forfeits any claim to spousal support, assets, or marital funds. The weight of it finally hit me. Not just the words, but the stark, brutal reality they represented. No house, no savings, no support, no backup plan. I sank onto the couch, the very couch where I had sat night after night, scrolling through a fantasy life while my real one disintegrated around me. My chest felt hollow, as if every ounce of air had been vacuumed from my lungs. I sat there for a long time, numb. No tears, no rage. Just a vast, terrifying emptiness. How did it come to this? I stared at the coffee table, tracing the faint outline of a cup stain, my mind replaying every small, selfish decision that had led me to this moment. Every casual, I'm just going out with the girls. Every secret smile at a message from someone who didn't matter. Every time I had rolled my eyes at Nolan when he showed concern. I thought I was so slick, so untouchable. But Nolan was a quiet man, and I had forgotten that quiet men are the most dangerous. They see everything. He saw it all coming before I even knew I was moving. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He waited. Patient, calculated. He knew I would eventually trip over my own ego, and he had set the trap perfectly. Now he was gone. No more babe, I'm home. No more dinners at the table where I'd half listen while checking my notifications. No more of the 1,000 small, stable things I had mistaken for boredom. They were all gone. I looked around the house, the kitchen island where we used to eat takeout, the photos of the kids on the mantelpiece, the life I had so desperately wanted to escape. It didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like an empty shell. I had been the victim in my own story for so long, convinced he was the one holding me back. But now, in the crushing silence, I saw the truth. He wasn't the problem. I was. I wanted more, but I had never stopped to define what more was. All those random guys I had texted, including Julian, none of them would be there for me now. They were just names on a screen, fleeting distractions that made me feel wanted for 5 minutes before they moved on to the next woman doing the exact same thing. I played myself. 10 years of marriage, and I thought love meant unconditional security. But love requires respect, and I had lost that somewhere along the way. My mind raced. How was I supposed to start over? I hadn't worked in nearly a decade. I was too busy living my best life, while he built his career, his savings, our future. A future that was now solely his. I lived off his paychecks, bought what I wanted, and told myself I deserved it. Now, I had nothing. Tears finally burned my eyes, but I bit them back. Crying felt too easy, like an admission of defeat. But the reality was, I was defeated. Utterly and completely. Checkmate. My phone lay on the cushion next to me, the same device I had used to invite this destruction into my life. For a second, I thought about texting Nolan, about begging. Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. But I knew it was pointless. When a man like Nolan makes up his mind, it's final. He didn't storm out in a fit of passion. He left with peace in his heart, because he had already won the war before I even knew we were fighting. And me? I was sitting here, surrounded by everything I thought was mine but never really was. The house, the furniture, the life we built, it was all his. I was just a tenant, and my lease was up. The doorbell rang, a shrill, jarring sound that broke the silence. I knew who it was. My feet felt like lead as I walked to the door. I opened it to find a man in a tan vest holding a clipboard. "Mrs. Callahan?" he asked, his tone polite but direct. "Yeah," I muttered, my throat dry. He handed me a large manila envelope. "You've been served." I took it, nodded, and closed the door. I didn't need to open it right away. The only thing worse than knowing you're about to lose everything is knowing, with absolute certainty, that you deserve it. Eventually, I sat at the kitchen table and tore it open. Pages of legal terms swam before my eyes, but one sentence stood out, typed in cold, unforgiving font. Petitioner requests dissolution of marriage with no division of assets or support to respondent. I read it 3 times. No money, no house, no support. Just me. Alone. I folded the papers neatly, set them on the table, and stared out the window. My world, which once felt so big and full of possibility, now felt small, the walls closing in. The regret was loud now, louder than my pride, louder than my excuses. I thought I was winning. In reality, I was losing the whole time. And the craziest part? I wasn't even mad at Nolan. I was mad at myself. Because I knew better. But knowing better doesn't mean a thing if you don't do better. I had always said I wanted freedom. Well, I finally got it. And as I sat there, in that silent, empty house, I realized my freedom felt exactly like a prison.